What if the most terrifying part of a murder is not the blood on the floor, but the person calmly standing beside it? On a quiet suburban street, a man was found dead in his own kitchen, no forced entry, no struggle, and a chilling message written in blood above his body. He let the killer in. But here is the twist that left investigators shaken to their core: the woman holding the knife was not the only one watching that night. There was someone else in the dark. Someone outside the window. Listening. Waiting. And what detectives uncovered next exposed a twisted partnership built on obsession, manipulation, and a deadly promise. Stay with me, because this is not just a story about murder. It is a story about trust, betrayal, and the horrifying truth that sometimes the real mastermind never steps inside the house. The gruesome murder that left investigators in shock. True crime documentary. The morning fog hung low over Briarwood Lane. It clung to the hedges like damp cotton. The neighborhood was silent. Too silent. Detective Aaron Hale stepped under the yellow tape. The house stood at the end of the cul-de-sac. White paint. Blue shutters. A swing on the porch that moved slightly in the cold wind. No sign of forced entry. No shattered glass. No screams reported. Just a single emergency call at 4:12 in the morning. A whispering voice. Then nothing. Inside, the air felt heavy. Metallic. Thick. The smell reached him first. Copper and rot. It clung to the back of his throat. The living room lights were still on. A coffee mug rested on the table. Steam no longer rising. A television screen flickered with static. Detective Hale stepped forward slowly. His shoes pressed softly into the carpet. Then he saw it. A dark trail. Thick. Crimson. It stretched from the hallway to the kitchen. Not splattered. Dragged. His pulse quickened. The kitchen floor gleamed under fluorescent light. Too clean in places. Too stained in others. Cabinet doors hung open. A chair lay overturned. And at the center of the room lay Daniel Mercer. 42 years old. Local businessman. Father of two. His body positioned on its back. Arms placed neatly at his sides. That was the first detail that felt wrong. There was order in the horror. His shirt had been cut open with precision. A single wound marked his chest. Deep. Deliberate. Surgical. No defensive injuries. No broken fingernails. No bruises on the forearms. His face was frozen in an expression that was not fear. It was confusion. As if he had recognized the person standing over him. Detective Hale crouched beside the body. The tile felt cold through his trousers. He noticed something else. A faint scent beneath the blood. Lavender. Soft. Out of place. He glanced toward the hallway. Family portraits lined the wall. Smiling faces. Vacations. Birthdays. A normal life captured in frames. At the end of the corridor, the bedroom door stood half open. The sheets were undisturbed. The closet doors closed. Jewelry untouched. Nothing stolen. This was not a robbery. This was personal. Very personal. A crime scene technician called his name. There was something on the ceiling. Hale stepped back into the kitchen. He tilted his head upward. His breath caught. Above the body, written in dark red across the white plaster, were 3 words. Perfectly spaced. Carefully drawn. You let me in. The letters were steady. No shaking. No hesitation. The message felt intimate. Accusing. Almost tender. Hale felt a chill spread across his spine. There were no fingerprints on the knife found in the sink. No signs of struggle in the house. No neighbors who heard anything unusual. Yet the back door was unlocked. Security system disarmed with the correct code. Someone Daniel Mercer trusted had walked through that door. Hours later, in the quiet hum of the precinct, Hale replayed the crime scene photographs. The body. The wound. The message. Then he saw a detail he had missed. On the kitchen counter, near the edge of the frame. A second coffee mug. Clean. Placed carefully beside the sink. 2 mugs. 1 victim. He requested the forensic report immediately. The toxicology results came first. Daniel Mercer had a sedative in his system. High dosage. Administered less than an hour before death. That explained the lack of struggle. He had been calm. Trusting. Perhaps even relaxed. Hale leaned back in his chair. The lavender scent. The neat arrangement of the body. The absence of rage in the wound. This was controlled. Intimate. Almost ritualistic. Then the lab called again. There was something else. Under the victim's fingernails, they found skin cells. Not from a fight. From contact. Recent. Gentle contact. The DNA results returned late that night. Hale stared at the name on the screen. His stomach tightened. The match belonged to someone already inside the house when officers arrived. Someone who had been crying in the driveway. Someone who claimed to have discovered the body moments before the emergency call. Emily Mercer. The wife. But the timeline created a deeper fracture in the story. Security footage from a neighbor's camera showed no one entering or leaving after midnight. No vehicles. No strangers. Only the faint outline of a figure standing at the kitchen window at 3:47 in the morning. Watching. Still. Unmoving. The shape was slender. Hair tied back. Detective Hale enlarged the image. The figure stood exactly where the body would later be found. Not outside. Inside the house. Staring into the dark yard as if waiting for something. Or someone. When Hale returned to the Mercer home the next evening, the air felt colder. Quieter. Emily sat at the dining table. Hands folded. Eyes red but dry. He noticed the faint scent of lavender perfume as he took his seat across from her. The same scent from the kitchen. Subtle. Lingering. He placed the photograph of the sealing message on the table. Her expression shifted. Not to shock. Not to horror. But to something softer. Almost reflective. Hale leaned forward slowly. And in a steady voice, he asked her why the security system had been disarmed using her personal code at 3:32 in the morning. Her lips parted slightly. The silence between them stretched thin. Like wire under tension. And then she smiled. The smile was small. Controlled. Almost patient. Detective Hale felt the air tighten around him. Emily Mercer tilted her head slightly. As if considering how much to reveal. Her voice, when it came, was soft. He trusted me. The words settled heavily between them. She folded her hands tighter on the table. Her nails were perfectly manicured. Pale lavender polish. The same faint scent drifted through the room. Hale kept his expression neutral. He asked her about the sedative. Her eyes flickered for the first time. Just a crack in the calm surface. He had trouble sleeping, she said. She poured him tea every night. Chamomile. Honey. A little extra help. The forensic report contradicted her. The dosage in Daniel Mercer's bloodstream was not mild. It was overwhelming. Enough to paralyze. Enough to silence. Hale placed another photograph on the table. The second coffee mug. Her mug. Untouched by blood. Untouched by panic. She looked down at it for a long moment. Then she began to speak. Not loudly. Not hysterically. But with unsettling clarity. She described the kitchen light reflecting in his eyes as he grew drowsy. She described how he smiled at her. How he thanked her for the tea. How he said he felt safe at home. The word safe trembled in the air. Hale felt a chill move through his chest. She told him Daniel had secrets. Financial lies. Another woman. Broken promises. But her tone held no rage. No bitterness. Only something colder. Resolution. When he could no longer lift his arms, she said she guided him to the floor. Gently. Carefully. She straddled him as he blinked up at her. Confused. Still trusting. She had prepared the knife earlier that evening. Sterilized. Sharpened. Placed beside the sink. She leaned closer to Hale. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I wanted him to understand. The message on the ceiling had taken time. Precision. She stood on a chair. Dipped her fingers into his blood. Each letter drawn slowly. You let me in. She said it was not a threat. It was the truth. He had opened the door to her once. Invited her into his life. Given her access to every password. Every code. Every weakness. And he never imagined she would be the danger. Hale felt the weight of her confession settle over the room. But something still felt incomplete. He asked her why she stood at the window at 3:47 in the morning. Her gaze shifted past him. Toward the dark glass behind his shoulder. She said she was waiting. Waiting to feel something. Shock. Regret. Fear. None of it came. Only silence. Only the sound of the refrigerator humming behind her. Hale noticed her breathing slow. Measured. Steady. Too steady. He asked her about the skin cells under Daniel's fingernails. Her smile returned. Softer this time. He held my hand, she said. Even at the end. He squeezed it. As if asking me to help him. The room felt smaller. The walls closer. Hale imagined the final moments. Daniel Mercer lying helpless on cold tile. Looking up at the woman he trusted most. Trying to speak. Unable to form words. Watching her raise the knife. Not in rage. Not in frenzy. But in silence. Emily leaned back in her chair. Almost relieved. As if releasing a burden she had carried for years. Outside, the wind brushed against the house. Soft. Whispering through the gutters. Hale stood slowly. His legs felt heavier than before. He signaled to the officers waiting by the door. They stepped forward quietly. No sudden movements. No dramatic shouts. Emily rose without resistance. She extended her wrists calmly. The metal cuffs clicked into place. Sharp. Final. As they guided her toward the patrol car, she paused at the porch. She looked back at the house. At the dark kitchen window. And for a brief second, her expression changed. Not to sorrow. Not to anger. But to something hollow. As if the act itself had not been the climax. As if something deeper had driven her. Something investigators would never fully understand. The following week, the case spread across national headlines. Neighbors spoke of how normal they seemed. Friends described their marriage as stable. Photographs of smiling holidays flooded television screens. Yet inside that pristine kitchen, beneath bright fluorescent light, a truth had unfolded. Trust can be the most dangerous weapon. Detective Hale returned to the house one final time before it was sealed for sale. The floors had been scrubbed. The walls repainted. The ceiling restored to blank white. But as he stood alone in the empty kitchen, he felt it again. That faint metallic echo in the air. He closed his eyes. And for a fleeting moment, he could almost see the words above him. Perfectly spaced. Carefully drawn. A reminder that sometimes the person invited closest to your heart is the one who knows exactly where to place the blade. The house was silent again. Stripped of furniture. Stripped of warmth. Yet it felt occupied. Hale opened his eyes slowly. The ceiling above him was blank. Fresh paint. Smooth. But his mind traced the letters that once bled across it. You let me in. He stepped toward the sink. New stainless steel fixtures reflected his tired face. The original had been removed as evidence. Still, he imagined the knife resting there. Clean. Waiting. A faint creak echoed from the hallway. Wood settling. Or something else. He told himself it was nothing. Just an old house adjusting to emptiness. Yet the sensation of being watched lingered. He walked to the living room. The indentation in the carpet where the couch once stood was still visible. A pale rectangle against darker fibers. Sunlight filtered weakly through the window. Dust floated in the beam. Slow. Weightless. He tried to reconstruct the timeline again. 3:32 in the morning. Security system disarmed. 3:47. A figure at the window. 4:12. The emergency call. A whisper. He had listened to that recording dozens of times. Breathing. Soft. Controlled. Not panicked. Not broken. Almost rehearsed. But there was something else in the background. Something subtle. A low rhythmic sound. At first, he thought it was interference. Static. Then he isolated the audio. Amplified it. The rhythm became clearer. Tap. 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 Slow and steady. Like fingernails against glass. He walked back into the kitchen and stared at the window above the sink. The yard outside stretched quiet and bare. A wooden fence lined the property. Beyond it, trees stood skeletal against the pale sky. He imagined Emily standing there. Watching her reflection. Or perhaps watching someone else. The autopsy report had one detail that never sat right with him. A secondary mark on Daniel's wrist. Faint. Circular. Not from restraint. Not from struggle. Almost like pressure. As if someone else had gripped him. But the DNA told a simple story. Emily's skin beneath his nails. Her code disarming the system. Her confession. Clean. Contained. Closed. Yet Hale felt the case pressing against the back of his thoughts. Unfinished. He stepped closer to the window. Leaning down slightly. And then he saw it. A thin scratch along the outer pane. Curved. Repeated. Several small arcs etched into the glass from the outside. Not fresh. But deliberate. He stepped outside into the cold air. The grass crunched beneath his shoes. He circled toward the kitchen window. Kneeling down to examine it from the yard. There were more marks. Higher up. Lower down. As if someone had been standing there. Dragging something sharp slowly across the surface. Back and forth. Back and forth. He felt a tightness build in his chest. The neighbor's security footage showed no one entering the yard. No gate opening. No shadow crossing the lawn. And yet these marks existed. He stood slowly. Scanning the tree line beyond the fence. The branches swayed gently in the wind. A distant crow cried out. Sharp. Lonely. His phone buzzed in his pocket. The sound startled him more than it should have. It was the forensic lab. Another update. The lavender scent detected at the scene had been analyzed further. It was not just perfume. It was blended with something else. A rare compound. Commonly used in certain clinical sedatives. Hospital grade. Not available over the counter. Hale froze. Emily Mercer had no medical background. No access to restricted pharmaceuticals. He asked the technician to repeat the compound name. His mind raced. There had been another person connected to Daniel Mercer with medical access. A private physician. A long-time friend. Dr. Samuel Kessler. Hale's breath slowed. Measured. The image of the scratch marks on the glass lingered in his mind. Tap. 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 The rhythmic sound from the emergency call replayed in his memory. Not interference. Not static. Fingernails against glass. From outside the house. Waiting. Listening. He looked back at the kitchen window. At his own reflection staring back at him. And for a brief, chilling moment, he imagined someone standing where he stood now that night. Watching the light inside. Watching Emily guide Daniel to the floor. Watching her lift the knife. Not alone. Never alone. A slow realization began to take shape. What if the message on the ceiling was not only meant for Daniel? What if it was a confession to someone else? Or a promise fulfilled? The wind picked up suddenly. The kitchen door behind him creaked open a few inches. Hale turned sharply. The empty house stood before him. Dark hallway. Silent rooms. He felt that sensation again. Of being observed. Measured. As if the true architect of the crime had never stepped into the spotlight. As if Emily had only been one piece of something far more calculated. He stepped back inside slowly. The air felt colder than before. He stood in the center of the kitchen once more. Looking up at the blank ceiling. Imagining unseen eyes tracing the same space. And deep in his gut, a thought settled heavily. The most horrifying crimes are not the ones committed in rage. They are the ones carefully shared. Planned. Executed with trust. And sometimes, the person who holds the knife is not the only one with blood on their hands. Hale remained still in the center of the kitchen. The silence pressed against his ears. He could hear his own breathing. Slow. Deliberate. He pulled out his phone and dialed the precinct. He asked for everything on Dr. Samuel Kessler. Financial records. Call logs. Recent prescriptions. Any connection to the Mercers beyond routine checkups. The response came faster than expected. Kessler had visited the Mercer home 3 nights before the murder. Unscheduled. No medical record filed. No official reason documented. Hale felt a pulse of heat rise behind his eyes. 3 nights before. Enough time to plan. Enough time to prepare. He stepped back outside and looked again at the yard. If someone had stood there that night, they would have had a clear view into the kitchen. The lighting inside had been bright. Almost theatrical. A stage. He imagined Kessler in the shadows. Coat collar raised. Watching through the glass. Listening to the faint sounds inside. Tap. 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 A signal. Or a reminder. Back at the station, Hale replayed Emily's interrogation footage. He slowed the frame when she smiled. There it was. A flicker in her eyes. Not pride. Not madness. Expectation. As if she believed someone else would understand. As if the confession was only half the story. Phone records revealed multiple late-night calls between Emily and Kessler in the weeks before the murder. Long conversations. Sometimes lasting over an hour. Always after Daniel had gone to sleep. Hale requested a warrant. Kessler's clinic was pristine. White walls. Sterile counters. Lavender air freshener humming softly near the reception desk. The scent hit Hale immediately. The same layered sweetness from the Mercer kitchen. Underneath it, faint and clinical. In Kessler's private office, investigators found a locked drawer. Inside lay a small vial. Half empty. The same sedative compound found in Daniel's bloodstream. Measured doses missing. Not enough to treat a patient. Enough to silence one. Kessler was brought in that evening. He sat across from Hale in the interrogation room. Calm. Collected. Hands folded just like Emily's had been. He denied everything at first. Said the vial was for research. Said Emily was a grieving widow looking for someone to blame. Hale placed a photograph of the scratch marks on the table. Kessler's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. A small reaction. But real. Hale leaned forward. He described the audio from the emergency call. The rhythmic tapping. The position outside the window. Kessler's gaze shifted downward. For a fraction of a second. Hale pressed harder. He laid out the timeline. The clinic visit. The late-night calls. The security code. The sedative. And then he asked one simple question. Were you watching when she killed him? The room fell into suffocating silence. Kessler's breathing changed. Barely noticeable. But heavier. Hale saw it then. Not fear. Not guilt. But something darker. Attachment. An obsession carefully buried beneath professionalism. Kessler finally spoke. His voice was low. Controlled. He said Daniel Mercer was a parasite. He said Emily had been suffering for years. He said she deserved freedom. Hale asked if freedom required an audience. Kessler's eyes flicked upward sharply. The mask slipped. Just enough. He admitted he had been outside the house. He admitted he had provided the sedative. But he insisted the decision to use it was Emily's alone. He claimed he stood at the window to make sure she went through with it. To make sure she was not afraid. Hale felt a chill crawl across his skin. This was not a crime of passion. It was a shared fantasy. Nurtured. Fed over whispered phone calls and quiet resentment. The message on the ceiling had been Emily's hand. But the idea behind it had been planted long before that night. You let me in. Not just into the house. Into the marriage. Into the cracks. Into the doubt. Kessler had positioned himself as confidant. Protector. Savior. Until the line between comfort and control vanished completely. In the weeks that followed, the full truth unraveled. Kessler had convinced Emily that Daniel was planning to leave her. He had shown her fabricated financial statements. Forged messages. Carefully crafted lies. Isolation became anger. Anger became resolve. And resolve became murder. The trial drew national attention. 2 educated adults. 1 calculated execution. A message written in blood that now echoed in every courtroom broadcast. Emily testified that she believed she was reclaiming her life. Kessler testified that he only wanted to protect her. But the evidence painted a colder picture. Manipulation. Control. A partnership rooted in obsession. Detective Hale attended the sentencing quietly. Both received life imprisonment. No possibility of parole. As the judge delivered the final words, Hale watched their reactions. Emily stared straight ahead. Expression distant. Kessler turned slightly toward her. Even in chains. Still watching. Still present. Months later, Hale passed through Briarwood Lane again. The Mercer house had new owners. Children's toys scattered across the lawn. Laughter drifting through open windows. Fresh life filling the rooms that once held silence. He slowed his car briefly. His eyes lifted to the kitchen window. The glass had been replaced. No scratches. No marks. Only clear reflection. For a moment, he saw his own face staring back. Older. Wearier. He understood something now that the headlines never captured. The true horror had not been the wound. Not the blood. Not even the message. It had been the quiet collaboration. The way two people could stand on opposite sides of glass. One inside holding the knife. One outside tapping softly. Both believing they were justified. Both believing they were right. And as Hale drove away, one final thought lingered in his mind. Trust is never broken in a single moment. It is eroded slowly. Whisper by whisper. Until the door opens willingly. And someone steps inside. Carrying more than love in their hands. Years passed. The headlines faded. The courtroom sketches gathered dust in forgotten archives. But Detective Aaron Hale never fully left that kitchen. Some nights, when the city was quiet, he would replay the case in his mind. Not the blood. Not the blade. But the stillness. The stillness before everything changed. He often thought about Daniel Mercer's final expression. Not fear. Not rage. Confusion. The look of a man who realized too late that danger had been sitting across from him for years. Hale came to understand something unsettling. Evil does not always arrive screaming. Sometimes it arrives softly. With tea in a warm mug. With reassurance. With a familiar code punched into a security panel. The Mercer house eventually felt like any other home again. Paint refreshed. Laughter restored. Yet for those who knew the truth, it would always carry a shadow. A reminder that trust is a fragile architecture. Invisible. Delicate. And once fractured, impossible to rebuild exactly as it was. Emily and Kessler remained behind concrete walls for the rest of their lives. Separated. No longer collaborators. No longer whispering late into the night. The partnership that had once felt powerful now reduced to silence. Detective Hale closed the case file for the final time on a quiet autumn evening. The folder felt heavier than paper should. He placed it into the archive cabinet. The drawer slid shut with a low metallic sound. Definitive. Final. As he stepped outside the precinct, cool air brushed against his face. The sky above was clear. Calm. Ordinary. He paused for a moment. Listening to the distant hum of traffic. The rhythm of a city unaware of how close horror can sit to home. He understood now that the most chilling words in that kitchen were not written in blood. They were spoken every day in ordinary lives. I trust you. And that was the true lesson left behind by the gruesome murder that shocked investigators. Not that violence exists. But that it can grow quietly in the spaces where trust lives. Hidden. Patient. Waiting for the door to open.